And I think that's what happens to lots of people that come to Hollywood to try to get in. They have these hopes and dreams and aspirations, but then when they don't, they might turn to their depression, might turn to using.
And I think that for me, I didn't really see how blessed I really was because I really was working.
Yes.
I was working more than most people had worked ever.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the blessing in that because I kept looking forward. Like, I want this. I want more. I want more. I want to do this.
Yeah.
And I would see all my friends like book all these gigs and get these movies. Like I would see Jada get, she got Menace to Society and The Inkwell. And I would audition for that stuff, but I would never get it.
Welcome to Peggy's Recovery Corner. This is a recovery podcast where we talk about all things recovery. Recovery from what? Recovery from addiction, from alcoholism, and from mental health. Before we get started, if you would please be so kind as to subscribe and to like and share this everywhere. We just want to carry the message of hope to as many people around the world as possible. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Ajai Sanders. Welcome to the corner.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here again.
But this time we professional.
Yeah, I see.
So it's so nice to have you here. Ajai is one of my dearest friends in recovery. We'll get into that more later, how you the language of the heart was captured from your mouth to my heart at a certain area where we sometimes congregate. We'll talk about that later. But let's talk about you.
Okay.
This is about
my favorite
Ajai.
subject.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so Ajai, who are you? Like, where were you born, raised, all that?
So, I was, first of all, thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was originally born and raised in Dallas, and just the regular Southern Baptist upbringing. I went to school from Monday through Friday, and on Saturdays, my mom made me clean the house. Those are my chores days before I go out to play. And Sundays was church. And then after church, we had dinner and watched football.
And was there siblings or anything like that too?
So my siblings were born in LA with my father and my stepmom.
Okay.
But I am my mother's only child. And so I was raised just with my mom. And so we pretty much grew up together. We pretty much grew up as, well, she was definitely the mother, but she was also a very fun mom. She was the cool mom. Everybody came over and borrowed her fancy clothes for prom. And, so I had the cool mom of the neighborhood. So.
And she's still cool because I know her.
She is.
She's a great lady.
Now she makes pies for everybody and makes them fall in love with her that way. So, yeah, she's amazing. So, so I just had a normal childhood. And so, on the weekends, some of the weekends, I would go to my great grandmother's house and hang out with her. And
this in Dallas.
This is in Dallas, and she lived in South Dallas, and that was my great grandmother. I would describe her as somebody that was like my one true love. Like I know what true love feels like by the way I loved her and by the way that she poured her love into me. And she died in 1987. When I was 20, going on 21. And that was pretty devastating for me because I felt like I'd lost my best friend, but I had already moved out to LA by then.
And what brought you to LA?
My dream was to live with my father, attend UCLA, and get into show business. So I lived with my dad for 5 months until he kicked me out of the house. And we had this big argument about something that meant something to him. And so when I got kicked out of the house, I dragged all of my clothes to my my school campus. I was going to Santa Monica College at the time, and I was in their
SMC.
dance. Yeah, I was in their dance program, and so I dragged my my trash bag full of clothes into dance class, and my friends were like, "What are you doing? What's that?" And I told them what happened. So then my friend offered for me to live with her and her family. I don't know if you saw that post recently about us celebrating her grandmother's 100th birthday.
Oh,
we recently just, anyway, so I go live with them. They treat me like I'm their long lost daughter, and they, I just fall into the fabric of their family home life. Her mother and father let me live with them for about almost a year.
And what was that? On the west side of LA?
Nah, this was like in South Central, right there on Crenshaw and Rodeo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was in the hood, and it was, and when I say the hood, a lot of people don't understand. Like, the hood is beautiful, has a lot of beautiful neighborhoods over there by Degnan and 43rd.
There's a lot of culture there.
A lot of so like back then, on the weekends, you would see, brothers on the corner like selling T-shirts and incense, and on the
Crenshaw
other corner
Boulevard.
on Crenshaw, and you'll see another set of FOI selling like bean pies, and that's the first time I ever had a bean pie. And this was like in 1980, like 1986. And
A bean pie is made of beans. Okay.
have you ever? And it tastes like sweet potato pie.
I have not had it. It sounds good though.
My God,
Oh my
you
God.
need to. Okay, I'll have to get you one. But anyway, so that was what was going on, and it was just a beautiful experience. And so
This is the late 80s.
this is the late 80s, and this is right around the time that Eddie Murphy was really hot. When Raw had first came out,
Yeah.
and Hollywood Shuffle was at the theaters.
remember.
And so the Baldwin Hills Theater was right down the
Yes.
street. So this was like
Good times.
Right. This was like around the time where I was like making friends and really getting, I was literally getting in touch with like the culture.
Yeah.
And
the culture, the scene.
yeah. And so, and then one day my friend took me down to 43rd and Crenshaw to the Comedy Act Theater at the Regency West.
Okay.
And that's when I discovered that live comedy existed. So that's when I was introduced to, I had never seen live comedy before in my life.
Right.
So that was kind of like the way. So the blessing of my father and I having that falling out turned out to be the start of my actual career.
Right.
Because had I not left the house, I would have never been introduced to that part of the world. Because I was kind of like in this bubble in Century City, because we lived right down the street from UCLA, Westwood area. And so that was kind of my scene for a minute. But there was really not a whole lot of people that looked like me in that hood at that time.
Over there, yeah.
Yeah, and it was fine, but I was like, I kind of want to I want to see
Blend
what
in
we're
with
doing,
my crowd.
what we doing,
Yeah.
So when I came over there, I was like, okay, here we are. And so all up and down Crenshaw, you could get anything. It was all Black owned, and you could get your hair done, your nails done. You can get like food. You can get, you could get anything, car wash, so everything was happening. And so that's kind of how that went. And then I got a job, and then I started learning my way around the city and making friends, and just still going to school and
At SMC.
At SMC.
So you were traveling from over there. Well, it's not that far.
No,
You go straight down the 10.
Yeah, we had my friend Angela Santiago, she had a car.
Right.
So we would always go, and her dad sort of restored one of his old cars and let us drive that. And so that was our first introduction to like adulthood. I think we were like 18, 19 years old, and then I started sort of tipping my toe into the waters of stand-up comedy. I started kind of going down there. I was curious, and I saw everybody from like Arsenio Hall to Sinbad to the Wayans Bros. Like
These were in the beginning of their careers.
This was kind of in the, because they'd all moved here from the East Coast.
Okay. Now,
So
some of them
Keenan
already
Ivory-
had careers, obviously.
Keenan Ivy Wayans already had a stand-up career, but they
Yeah.
were kind of like starting out too.
Yeah,
So I sort of watched their evolution as I began mine. And so around that same time, 87, 88, 89, like I said, when Eddie Murphy was kind of hot,
Well, he was
not
super
kind of
hot.
hot,
Yeah,
he
he
was
was
like
hot.
the ultimate global superstar. We are all still sort of like flying on his coattails, if you will,
Right,
of
right,
his
right.
stardom, because he kind of created this comedy explosion. Like everybody, Robert Townsend and all those guys started to bloom and blossom, and then that's how we got introduced to people like John Witherspoon. Just the legend, the comedy legends of today were kind of building. Like Martin Lawrence was brand new,
Yes.
and Tommy Davidson was brand new, and they had all just moved here from DC. So it was crazy fun, and that's how it kind of all started for me.
Okay. And was there any partying going on during that time?
So I didn't really drink yet back then. I was still kind of green and innocent and fresh out of Dallas. So I was still kind of getting to know my place. And every now and then I'd kind of act like a grown up and order a glass of wine or, and I'd go to the bartender and I'd say, give me something, and he would make me a 7 and 7. And, but I was never really into the scene yet.
Right.
Not until around the, I would say early 90s. When the Chronic first came out.
Oh yeah.
The Dr. Dre and Snoop.
Oh, that was a hell of a time.
Right. Oh God, really?
I remember it like it was yesterday.
Me too.
The day that Snoop dropped his album,
yeah,
we were lined up. We were like lined up early in the morning waiting for that. Like we had been waiting for a long time. Those were good times.
So what's cool about that is there was a comedian by the name of Ricky Harris.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so Ricky was Snoop's cousin.
Okay.
So I heard Snoop's album, The Chronic, before it came out, because he had the little demo tape, and Dre. He would play. We would smoke weed in his car and listen to the album, the demo in his little what kind of car? I think that was like a Datsun 280ZX or something, right? I think it was like orange.
Right. Actually, back then, my sister that you just met was living in LA on the west side, and her and her friend Jen were hanging out with Dre and Snoop smoking all the time.
Crazy. So there's
before they got big.
Right. So that was, those.
I mean, Dre already was with NWA, but like.
Right. But he wasn't like the super producer that he's known for now.
It was in the works.
Yeah. But but culturally, like we all knew that Dre was like the dude.
Yeah.
So.
On the up and up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, so time passed. I started to, develop in my career a little bit and make a name for myself. And
well, how did that happen?
Well, so, it was kind of like on a whim. I would go down to the club all the time with my friend Corinne, and so one night a comedian was late, and the comedy club owner, he was like, "Hey, so
you want to get up there? Can
you introduce Robin, because we got to get this show started?" And I was like, okay, and I sucked for a lot of times.
Sucked as a comedian or
as a comedian? Okay. Like I didn't know I was supposed to be funny, and so he kept asking me to do it, and I was like, "Why is this guy asking me to do this? I'm not a comedian. I'm a dancer. Like, anyway, I'll do it, but I don't know why." So he kept asking me to do it every single week, and I kept showing up and doing it, and then Robin Harris pulled me to the side and was like, "Hey, listen, you got good stage presence, but you need material."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, I'm not really funny. I'm not a comedian." He was like, "Actually, you need to say something if you're going to introduce me. You need to have something to say."
Right.
So he sort of mentored me and showed me the ropes. And so when I realized I had to be funny, that place was really my university. Like that was the spot that I saw every great comedian perform, and I just started taking notes. And literally about 2 years later, some folks came down from New York, producing this new show called Def Comedy Jam.
Oh.
And they wanted to audition us. And they came down. That was the hottest black comedy club in LA. So they came there and saw me and offered me 7 minutes on HBO. And that was like my first time ever doing television.
Wow.
And not a bad way to get started, right?
And here you thought you weren't even funny in the beginning.
No.
That's some imposter syndrome stuff.
Well, I don't think I was just aware of it.
Yeah.
Because I had never tapped into that side of my personality.
But you had it in you.
I discovered that I had it in me, and I discovered that I was as funny as my father.
Oh, okay.
Like my father's got that kind of sense of humor.
Was he comedic? Was he funny?
Oh, it made me laugh all the time.
Good.
Yeah,
so that's where you got it from.
He was just one of those slick dudes, from he's from that era, like, they would rhyme a lot. Remember how Muhammad Ali would, rumble in the jungle, like that's he would always just do. So my father was kind of that, he was kind of that ilk. So I kind of picked up and tapped into that, and then I just kind of copied a lot of the guys that I saw on stage. Like Ricky Harris would do some things that I would sort of mimic, and Martin would do the same. Martin was sort of working on Shanae back then.
Right.
So I would kind of like steal a little bit of that from that persona from him.
Wait, you mean, wasn't Shanae, that was not Martin.
You think about Wanda with Jamie Foxx.
Oh, I thought Jamie Foxx was Shanae.
No, Jamie was Wanda.
Oh, Martin was Shanae.
Martin was Shanae.
Oh, yeah.
But I helped Jamie Foxx write just develop Wanda.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. Like again, like we all just kind of hung out.
Okay.
So
You're right, Martin was.
Yeah. So things started to happen. I started doing commercials, and I injured myself as a dancer, so I couldn't dance anymore.
You had an agent during that time?
Not yet, but
how were you getting these commercials?
So what happened was Robin Harris was so popular, and the club had become so hot that all of Black Hollywood would show up to this comedy club just to watch him.
Right.
So we were like the commercial breaks, like all of the comedians that were coming up. We were like the up and coming comics that were just kind of going up when Robin needed a break, because he would go up and do like a half hour in between each comedian. So there was this woman. So Hollywood came down to see who this new guy was. And so I was a byproduct of them coming to see him.
Right.
They discovered me too. And so this one lady named Shayna Landsberg from NBC, she was in the house one night and she pulled me to the side, gave me her card, and she said, "So you're really good. I think you should." She gave me some advice, and she told me never to do extra work. And she told me to, she referred me to her friend named John Miranda, who was a commercial coach.
Okay.
And she says, "I think you'd be great." And mind you, I was 19, but I looked 15 back then. And so she said, "You would be really good for commercials." And I took his class, and literally like on my first or second audition, I booked a KFC commercial. And then I booked a McDonald's, and I was just doing commercials from that point on. And then in the meantime, they kept mentioning this show, A Different World. And they were like, "Yeah, you would be really great to do that show, but you're not ready yet. You need some more classes. You need some more experience." So I would do theater in the summertime just to sort of like hone my craft. And then opportunity came up for me to audition for a part, and I did that. So around that time is when kind of started smoking weed a little bit and kind of getting comfortable, meeting a few of the rappers. And I met Tupac, and I met Snoop because Ricky was his cousin.
And this is before A Different World.
Yeah, I was kind of like starting my little weed career.
Sure.
Like I was kind of tapping into it a little bit.
I mean, it was a way of life back then.
Back then it was just the culture, and so.
And it still is these days, apparently.
Right. And it was, it was so funny because back then we were like, wouldn't it be a trip if we could like buy weed legally?
Yeah.
We never even like thought that it would ever be a reality, right? We were like, and I remember me and Regina King we was in a limo one night, and we was like, "Girl, wouldn't that be a trip if you could just like walk up to a counter and be like, 'Can I get a pound of Endo?'"
Yeah.
and we would just, and like today we're actually doing that.
I'm telling you.
Ain't that crazy?
All those years I was transporting it illegally,
Now it's not
looking
even
over
as
my
fun.
shoulder, and now
Right.
it's like you can
Right.
go to
Right.
MedMen and buy it in a store.
Right. I was sneaking it on planes and stuff.
Exactly. So when you heard about this show called A Different World, did you know it's an offspring to another show, right?
It was a spinoff of the Cosby Show.
Spinoff, yep.
And I don't know, I didn't know anything about it. I had never watched it because on Thursday
Never watched
night,
the Cosby Show?
I'd never watched A Different World, but I watched the Cosby Show.
Cosby Show we watched religiously.
Everybody.
It was great.
I'm still watching it a little bit now.
Good old show.
Every time I look at it, I'm like, "Oh my God, this show was so good."
It was so good.
So no, I never watched it, but I heard so much about it, and I'm like, "What is this show people keep telling me about?" And I got an audition to play this character named Gina. Even then, because the reason I didn't watch it was because Thursday nights was the nights I had to go to the comedy club.
Yeah.
So it just kind of clashed with that. And so I got this audition to audition for A Different World, and so I booked it. And at the same time, I went to New York to film Def Comedy Jam. So around the very same, I want to say within the same week, both shows aired at the same time.
Wow.
In the same week. And so my career literally like took off like on a whirlwind. And
now you're not just recognized in commercials, you're on a major show.
well, the commercial thing was interesting because I think a lot of people were like, "God, you look really familiar," but I can't really, people couldn't really place me.
They've been seeing you.
And so that's kind of the same thing that happened with A Different World too. They kind of, "You look like that girl that,"
on that show.
but then the more that they kept calling me to do the show, people would recognize me and they go, "You look like that girl on A Different World, but you're prettier in person." And I would say, "Thank you."
But that's me.
Yeah. So I would just like leave it there, you know? So that's kind of the way it all kind of happened. So the more successful I became, the more the imposter syndrome would develop on the inside.
Okay.
Because it had happened so fast, I didn't think I deserved it. Even though if I looked back, if I had the wisdom back then to look back at my life and go, I've been working towards this all my life.
And that's what you wanted. You said
My whole life.
You came out there wanting to be in entertainment.
Yeah. But I didn't really put it together. So I suffered from the imposter syndrome, right? And I was like, oh man, I don't really know if I really deserve this.
Yes.
And, I was making more money than anybody in my entire family, like collectively had ever made.
Yeah.
And I felt kind of guilty that I was the only one. And a lot of entertainers do go through that. They go through that success guilt where they feel kind of, like,
am I really
supposed to be here, And so then I started smoking a lot more weed and, started drinking. And then the more successful I became, the more my circle started to sort of the more my circle was sort of morph into being around other famous people. So I found myself in circles with like Eddie Murphy and Lionel Richie and, like
them Hollywood Hills
Patti
parties.
LaBelle and Diana Ross. I'm not Diana Ross, but Diane Carroll. And, I'm like, what am I doing here? And I never really felt like I deserved to belong there. I didn't really feel like I was worthy. And so I think that's when my disease sort of like started to kick in and ramp up. And, then I started to get these opportunities to audition for these A-list movies. And I would do it, but I didn't really think that I was, again, worthy. And then I would get really, 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 really close. Because it was interesting. Like, I didn't really feel worthy of it, but I really wanted it. So I became really obsessed with like getting more and more jobs. So I did. I worked on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I worked on Hang with Mr. Cooper, the Wayans Brothers, and Jamie Foxx Show, and and the Martin Show, and all these. I got all these opportunities in the Parenthood, and Are We There Yet, and the Moesha. But when it came to doing film, I would get close, but I wouldn't get the part. And so that's the thing that would kind of depress me a little bit. So when every time I
think it can mess with actors and actresses' minds.
Oh, it absolutely just it really, really.
And I think that's what happens to lots of people that come to Hollywood to try to get in. They have these hopes and dreams and aspirations, but then when they don't, they might turn to their depression, might turn to using.
And I think that for me, I didn't really see how blessed I really was because I really was working.
Yes.
I was working more than most people had worked ever.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the blessing in that because I kept looking forward. Like, I want this. I want more. I want more. I want to do this.
Yeah.
And I would see all my friends like book all these gigs and get these movies. Like I would see Jada get, she got Menace to Society and The Inkwell. And I would audition for that stuff, but I would never get it.
Right.
So immediately I feel like a failure, regardless of all the work that I had done before.
Right.
So that was kind of the case for me. And that's kind of when the disease of alcoholism really sort of, just started to mess with me a lot, and play with my mind and tell me that I wasn't worthy and I wasn't good enough. And, you might as well just quit. You might as well just give up. So Jamie Foxx comes he was already in my life, but he came to me one day and he was like, I just got this deal with Warner Brothers and I wrote this part for you in my show. And I was like, oh, great. So I'm thinking, well, great. This is going to be it. This will be the thing. And so Warner Brothers made me audition, which I thought was odd.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, if something's written for me, then why do I have to audition for the part that's already written for me?
Yeah.
And so I had to audition 5, 6, 7 times against all these other women. And I thought it was still so strange. I'm like, why the fuck am I having to?
Yeah.
And turned out that they already had a deal in place with another actress and they gave the part to her. And that was the thing I think that really devastated me because
you thought you had that.
I thought, well, if something's written for you, you still have a chance of not getting it. And I thought, well, now what's the point? So that's what really put me over the top. And I just started going ham with my disease. I started just, smoking weed, and I just started to, not show up for auditions And I just kind of gave up, I just felt depleted and deflated, because I thought, well, what's the point in putting all this work in if you're still not gonna, get the thing that you're working hard for? So, so that really put a damper on things because I would just stay home and drink and smoke and wouldn't show up for gigs, wouldn't show up for my road gigs, wasn't getting any road gigs anymore, because now I'm unreliable, or I would lie and tell them that I was unavailable.
Right.
But I was really just unreliable, if I'm being honest. And so that's so the mid 90s to like the late 90s is when I was really in the throes of my disease. And I just started to, conduct myself in a way that I wasn't really proud of. And, and I was just, just not, I just didn't have any hope anymore. And I just, said, fuck it. I just didn't want to be in that game anymore. I was just tired of working hard and not getting the benefits of it.
Yeah.
And I just bought more weed and drank more alcohol. And that was how my days were, like day after day after day.
Right.
Until, I'd gotten to be 30, 40 pounds underweight. And, I found that my world became really small, and I became, agoraphobic. I wouldn't even check my mail. I wouldn't take out my trash. So my house was funky. I was funky. I wasn't showering, on a day. I just didn't care anymore. I literally just gave up. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I didn't really live my life in between those auditions, in between those gigs, in between those opportunities. I didn't have any other outside interests.
Right. You were just on the grind trying to make that lifestyle happen.
And so when you go back to that day that my father kicked me out of the house, he told me, you should go back to Texas. You're never going to make it here. And
made you feel less than.
Made me feel less than, but I was on a mission to prove him wrong.
Right.
So that's why I stayed, because I was like, I'll show you. So the next however many years that was, I spent proving him wrong, and I succeeded. And then on the backside of that, late 90s, that's when I'm like, you know what? Maybe Dad was right. Maybe I'm just a loser. Maybe I'm blah, blah, blah. My alcoholism was just talking really loud to me, and telling me that I wasn't worthy, and maybe I'm not as talented as I thought I was. Maybe, I'm not as pretty as I thought I was, and maybe they're right. Maybe Hollywood is right, that maybe I'm not leading lady material. Oh, they fed all these negative lies to me over time, and well, we don't really like your type, if I didn't look like Halle Berry, then you're not what we're looking for. You're not good enough.
Yeah.
So, I just sort of like fell into that pool of bitter morass and loneliness, like our literature tells us, and I fell into that space for about 3 or 4 years. I just drank and drank and drank and drank. And one day I realized that I was behaving like my grandmother, because I have a grandmother that lived in New Jersey, and she was an alcoholic. And I watched her behave. First of all, I watched the transformation from this graceful, beautiful, eloquent, charismatic, successful woman turn into this demonic creature when she drank. And now when I was a little girl, I was like, I'm never going to be like that. So in the middle of those 3 years when I'm in the throes of my disease, I remember I resembled that, like my grandmother. And that's what kind of got my attention a little bit. It didn't make me stop drinking yet, but I was like, oh my God, I'm just like her.
Oh.
And so, friends stopped calling, the invites stopped. No more invitations to red carpet events or premieres, and Hollywood functions had just came to a halt. And what's interesting is a part of me was okay with that.
Yeah.
And then a part of me missed it. And then the other part of me resented it.
Right.
Well, fuck those people. Blah! Yeah. And then I'll drink more, And then one day I got a call from an old friend, and he invited me to his fight party. Now, mind you, a lot of my friends around this time, I had built all these relationships over time, right? And they all knew that my father was a former boxer and he was a cut man and he was a trainer. So they all knew who my dad was.
Yeah.
And so they all knew that I liked boxing. So my friend Robert called me up and asked me to come to his fight party. Because it was a big fight that night. I think it was Oscar De La Hoya and Felix Trinidad.
Okay.
And
major.
right. And I remember it was in February of 99.
God, you got a good memory.
And I thought, and I said, for what? Now, mind you, up until this point, I was not even checking my mail. I wasn't I wasn't going outside. And I said, okay. And I accepted his invite. And then I hung up the phone. I was like, what the hell? And I was like shocked. Like, why would you say yes?
Yeah.
So now that I said yes, I said, okay. So I had to gear myself up to go to the party. So all day long, I'm trying to get ready for this party. Now, mind you, I don't know where my clothes are because I've gotten stuff. My house is a mess. I don't know what to wear. And so it took me all day to get ready. And I called the Pink Dot, which was my go-to.
I remember Pink Dot. Yeah.
Called the Pink Dot, ordered all my, because I made a deal. I was like, okay, you're going to drink all day and, get high and do whatever you need to do here. And that way you won't get in trouble when you go there. You'll already be nice.
Yeah.
And so I'd made a deal and said, okay, you're not just going to drink water the rest. So I drank all day and smoked all day and got ready and played my music and I geared myself up. And mind you, I'd lost my car by then. I'd lost all, because I wasn't paying bills. I wasn't being responsible and, handling my business. So I'd lost my vehicle. And so I took a taxi from my house in the Valley to his house in Beverly Hills. And so he was like, don't worry, I got you. I'll pay for it when you get here. I was like, okay. So I get to his house and I've already said, okay, you're not, I've already made a deal with myself. And so I go sit on the sofa and this really good looking man was sitting on the sofa. Right. And I recognized him. He played for the Oakland Raiders back then and he's retired now, but he was playing for the Oakland Raiders back then. And so he was flirting with me and I was flirting back and he recognized me from my past work. And so we're kind of getting chummy and he offers me a drink and I said, no, thank you. And I was really proud of myself. And so I was like,
wow.
just give me some water. So he brought me back this big bottle of Evian water. And so then he gets up again, makes himself a drink and comes back. And he goes, listen, I know you said you didn't want anything to drink, but just taste this. This is really good.
Uh-oh.
And I thought, well, how bad can that be? It's just a sip.
Yeah.
I took a sip and I went into a blackout. And I, to this day, don't know who won that fight.
Oh, man.
And the next morning I came to in a hotel room lying next to that guy. And I knew it was not the same house because I recognized the wallpaper was different.
Yeah.
And I was like, this don't look like the house. So I was like, oh my God. So I woke up, realized I had no clothes on. And I was like, oh my God. So I'm mortified. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. And I try to storm out, get my stuff. And so he was like, hey, where you going? He's waking up. He's like, hey, where you going? And I was like, I got to get out of here. And so I storm out of his hotel room. And so the bellman stops me. And so he says, ma'am, are you okay? And I go, yeah, I'm fine. I got to go downstairs. I got to go home. And so then he goes, well, you might want to put your clothes on first.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh yeah. So I put on my clothes. My clothes are on inside out.
Yeah.
I'm smelling like a freaking trash dumpster. And I get into a taxi and I drive home and I ride home. And that was a very long taxi ride home from Beverly Hills or West LA to
the Valley.
And I was just so disappointed in myself and so mortified and just humiliated. And I was like, I can't do this again. I can't do this anymore.
Time to change.
Yeah. And I get on the phone, I call my sister and I told her what had happened. And so she says, that's okay. Well, and I go, no, I really have a problem. She's like, really? And I told her, I said, yes. She goes, I never saw you drink before. I go check your bar. Her whole bar was full of water because I had emptied her whole bar the last time I had visited her. She's like, oh my God, because my sister wasn't a drinker like that.
Yeah.
Like that was just for
so
entertainment.
She wasn't keeping track of it.
She wasn't keeping track of anything. And I just snuck it all and drank. So I said, yeah, that was me. And so she goes, okay, I'll call you right back. So I tried to call Betty Ford myself while I was waiting for her to call me back. And so Betty Ford picked up the phone. I told him I needed to check in. And she said, the lady on the phone said, we'll have a bed available for you in a couple of weeks. And I said, ma'am, I'm going to be dead in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I need something today. And I hung up on her, and I was, mad because A, I wasn't getting my way, and B, I'm desperate. And so my sister called me back, and she found me a place in Laguna Beach. And the next day she got me to Spencer Recovery, and I thought my life was going to be over. Oh God, here I am. How'd I get here? That's all those words that we in recovery say to ourselves. How did I get here?
Yeah.
And there was this lady named Nurse Betty. I don't know if you remember Nurse Betty.
I don't know.
She was just...
She worked there?
She was an angel. Yeah, she was an intake nurse there. And she's the one that would examine us, make sure that we're not, going to die from the DTs,
Right.
Right. And so I checked in. And so I remember Alex, the guy who admitted me, he goes, how long do you want to stay? And I go, I was so delusional. I go, oh, just maybe a couple days, maybe a week. And so he looked at me. He was like, okay, I'll put down 7 days. How about that? And I go, okay, yeah, that's fine. I just need some sleep.
Yeah.
And I ended up staying for 45 days.
Wow.
And
did you fall in love with Laguna Beach?
no, but I fell in love with recovery.
I love that.
And I was so happy and so excited that I was able to go 2 days, 3 days, 4 days.
Right. Did it seem like something that you wanted for a while?
I think I did.
Yeah.
I think I wanted to feel normal again. And when I say normal, I wanted to be able to wake up and not need to smoke a joint before I start my day. I wanted to.
Was this in your 20s?
No, I was 31 by then.
31.
And so I was so impressed with the fact that I could go like days in a row without having a drink or without needing a drink.
Right.
Or without even thinking about a drink.
Yeah.
And, I did every group. I was just so willing because I was loving how I felt again.
I could picture it with you.
I felt alive again.
Yeah, that's what happened. That was my experience too.
Yeah. And so I was like,
let's do this.
Okay, yeah. And so,
it's a new
because
way of
that
life.
was the thing that I prayed for when I was alone in that apartment. God, if you could just let me not drink for an hour,
right,
2 hours, let me not have to need this, because drinking no longer became a luxury, it became a necessity.
Yes.
So I didn't want it to be a necessity anymore. And I didn't want to die on the floor by myself in this empty, nasty apartment and people not know that I'm even dead.
Yeah, they may not have found you for a few days.
For a few weeks, actually, because that's how I had lived my life. Like I had
agoraphobia.
Cut everybody off. And nobody knew where I was, what was going on. And so when I was in that treatment center, man, I was just on fire. And I had memorized all the readings already, and I knew all the.
Of course you did.
I love the prayers,
and
and so I thought, yeah, this is good. And so then, I was willing to do all the chores, and I just was so happy that I felt better.
I could see that with you.
And I could sleep again, and I made friends and laughed again for the first time, and so what I thought was the end of my life was actually the new beginning.
Right.
And so so here I am 25 years in the game and still feel the exact same enthusiasm as I did back then.
Which works best for us if we're in recovery, if we're still on fire for this thing. And that's the thing I wanted to say. I'm 17 years sober, and you were one of the ones, and I always say this, I say it very proudly, because when I first saw you, I was intimidated. I thought, well, everybody knows her, and she knows everybody, and she's well-spoken, but there was a lot of people that I would hear speak in the recovery circles, but sometimes it would just be like the same old jargon. Some people would be spitting the literature or even implementing it into their shares. But you and another individual who was an old skinhead, right? But we were in the same rooms, and when I was a newcomer, often in the morning meeting, I would have my head down, and I didn't really want to, I would listen and hear the same shit all the time, but then every once in a while, he would share first, or you would share first, and you would come with a share. And I think, Those two come here regularly. They are polar opposites.
Yeah.
But they speak about the relationship with their higher power, with God.
Yeah.
And they talk about the recovery process. And they get along.
Wasn't that crazy? Like, I remember I was so afraid of him. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to be able to, like, he's a skinhead. He hates me.
Right.
And he's going to try to do something to me in the parking lot or something. And then I finally had a conversation with him and I thought, well, we're more alike than we are different. Like, how are you a skinhead and one of your best friends was a member of the Nation of Islam? That's great. Like,
Yeah.
So that's why I love recovery, because it has replaced every philosophical ideal that I had.
Right.
You know, and it helped me drop the scales from my eyes, and it really helped me divorce myself from all of my prejudices, because it's not just them that are prejudiced against us. We all come in with these
preconceived
these
notions,
fixed ideas of
yeah.
who people are. Like, I remember I met this guy named Mark. I don't know if you know Mark, but he was back then, he was like this big, huge, muscular, big mustache and overalls and tattoos. And I was like, oh my God, this dude is like, there's no way I can ever get along with him. And he turned out to be this sweet teddy bear,
gentle
soft-spoken. Yes. And I thought, see, you just never know like how God is going to dress himself up to present himself to you.
So well said.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so this guy was a major part of my recovery. The skinhead is a major part of my recovery.
I know he is.
And I just saw him last night.
No, I love the level of respect that you two have for each other, because you still, after all these years, when I'm sitting in the room and both of you share, I think to myself, they're still holding it down.
Yeah.
And that for me demonstrates to the newcomer, to the new people, or even people that are regulars, that we still show up.
Yeah.
This is part of our essence. This is part of our makeup now. This is what we do. We get to have our big, beautiful lives outside of the recovery world, but recovery is within us.
Yeah, I think for me, it's exactly right. Like, that is what gives me my big life. Like, coming in and doing the work there really has helped me do the work in my own life.
Right.
You know, teaches us to be responsible. It has retaught me everything that I learned in kindergarten, right? You know, and it has given me this other gear inside of me to live life no matter what, even when I'm facing challenges, even when I'm, you know, experiencing some type of financial insecurity, or even when I'm, you know, my relationships aren't where I want them to be, or the guy's not calling me back, or whatever the situation is, you know, I get a chance to learn how to manage, you know, myself through living life on life's terms, because life is not going to always be perfect, and it's not going to just be orgasms and rainbows every day, but most days it is.
Right.
And that's the cool part.
Yeah.
And because if we live in our lives from the inside out, that's what the recovery fellowship has taught me, is how to live my life from the inside out, and to go inside and find out where I am emotionally, where I am mentally, you know, what am I really thinking? What's really my motive? And, you know, and how am I going to handle this particular problem? You know, do I handle it with a drink, or do I handle it with, you know, do I call somebody that knows more about the situation and ask them for help?
Right.
You know, and that's so all those times sitting in those rooms and listening and being teachable and being open-minded, you know, doing the prayers, doing that one prayer that I love that sets aside every preconceived notion that I may come in with, you know, and keep me open-minded and willing to learn something new every single day. So I'm grateful there's no graduation day, man, because
there isn't.
Because I keep like, and here's the thing, we're holding it down because there were some people that came in before us
that were holding it down
held
for
it down.
us.
Yeah. So kept the doors open and the lights on for us.
Yeah.
So it's my responsibility to do the same.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it would be the blind leading the blind.
Oh my God.
So, real quick, I know that you're still in comedy.
Yes.
And you do a lot of your stuff on cruises and also various places throughout the country. And as a lady who's recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, never any temptations or anything like that to drink. You get to be in those places and be just fine with it.
Well, so when I first got sober, I decided I wanted nothing to do with my career. And I was willing to let that be in the past. And I was
You even went so far as moving to Orange County.
yeah, I moved to OC. I didn't want anything to do with Hollywood anymore. I felt like I had done all that I could do, and I felt like I was done with it. And one day around 2007-ish is when the bug bit me again. And so I kind of dabbled back into it a little bit and was doing comedy. But then I was like, you know what? I really just love my sober life. And I really didn't need to, like, I wasn't desperately seeking show business anymore the way I was before. And so it just kept kind of gnawing at me a little bit and kept kind of chirping at me. And I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. And so I had a little talk with God and I prayed a lot. And okay, if it's your will, then, let me do it on my terms.
Right.
And so I was informed by my higher power that I wasn't done yet. And I was like, all right, well, if you want me to do this, then we're going to have to do it this way. I don't want to do it that way like I did it before.
Right.
And put myself in those positions that made me, that brought harm to my life.
Right.
And I didn't want to drink again. So, so God has restored my career in such a way that is just remarkable. So I get to do cruises, which takes me all over the world. And I get to perform in front of thousands of people who come from all over the world, like literally all over the world. We sit in one room, they laugh at my jokes, and it just gives me this sense of pride and reassurance that we're all alike and we're more connected than we're willing to believe if we watch the media enough. We're not that separated. We're not that divided. And we have a lot more in common than we are different.
Because we're all human.
All human. We all have the same experiences. We all want the same thing.
Right.
And it's just a wonderful experience. And if I'm on a cruise, then I still participate in my recovery.
Absolutely.
I have ways that I can still connect. And
we're creative like that.
But I can tell you, when it is time for me to go home, the first thing I do is I run to the people. I run to my tribe,
That's right.
because I love the personal interaction that I get. Because sometimes I do feel a little bit isolated when I'm out there at sea, and there is no one else that I can sit down.
You could always call me if you want to.
Well, but sometimes I don't even have coverage.
Oh.
So I have to, I have my literature with me. I've got all my reminders. And I've got my prayers that I do, and I meditate.
You got God.
God is everywhere, right?
Everywhere.
And then I have, Zoom. I can always Zoom people.
That's right. If you got a Wi-Fi signal,
if I got a Wi-Fi signal, I'll Zoom in and connect with people and stuff. So that's the beauty of being able to go anywhere a free woman can go.
I love
that.
that.
And that's why I still go to those rooms and I hold it down, because when it's time for me to get out there in the world, I need to be girded up. I need to have my, I need to make my deposit so that I have something to stand on. So it's been a great life. It's still, it's the best is still yet to come. Even though it's been 25, I'm looking forward to 25 more.
That's right. If not more.
If not more.
See, I want to tell you real quick, because you helped me so much as a newcomer, and over the years that we developed this friendship, you've become one of my dearest, best friends.
Yes.
It's just that way.
And you've become mine.
Oh, thank you. I want you to know, and I told you earlier, I'm going to stroke your ego a little bit.
Lord.
But this matters to me a lot. So seeing you as a woman in recovery, what really stands out is the way that you described what happened that brought you into recovery and how you didn't like that about yourself.
Yeah.
I see you as a woman that is dignified, that has integrity, that cares about herself, that really wants to make good choices. And you do that with all the men and women that you work with. But there's something else that I really love about you too, is that you help the community. You bring us together more than ever. There are certain things that you do within our recovery community down in Orange County where you put on events, and these are events that the togetherness. If I was a newcomer and I came into that, I wouldn't really think about who put this all together, who organized this event, but you're a great organizer. The events that you put on, please don't stop doing that because we need more like you because there's not enough like you that are doing that stuff.
Okay.
So please, and I'll do everything I can to support you in doing that too.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love you dearly. What I would like for you to do is to put a little bit of good energy out into the universe before we wrap it up.
Okay.
And tell anybody anybody that might be watching that's struggling with addiction, alcoholism, mental health, whatever. What have you got to say? Put some good energy out there.
Okay. So, well, here's what I'll say to anyone out there that, if you may be thinking about, first of all, I will say this. You're not a bad person trying to get good. You are a sick person trying to get well. We suffer from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So there's nothing wrong with you. You just have a disease. It's just like somebody that may have MS or cancer or whatever. We have a similar terminal fatal disease. The only difference with us is that what helps us heal and what helps us recover is each other, right? We do have this literature that we get to read, and we do have these different things that we can do, to apply those principles to our lives. But if there's anything that was said today that maybe have helped you or whatever, if you feel like you can relate to anything that I had to say, it's all good. Make a phone call. Be willing to decide to get better. And if you want your life to be more than what it is today, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, I say join us. I'm here. Pej is here. I know that there's probably a link or some type of way that you can connect to the recovery community. We are here for you, and come on in and join us and sit all the way down, and your life will get even better than what I think my life is. I think, but you are going to have the experience of a lifetime if you could just be willing to make that decision to come on in and join us. You have everything that you need. You are worthy, and you have a purpose. You may not know it now, but you have a purpose, and the world is waiting for you to live in that purpose, because we need you more than probably you think you need us. So come all the way in, sit all the way down, join us, and reach out your hand, because our hand is here for you. So hope that was something.
I love that. And I love that, and I love you, and thank you for coming on
love you
Pej's
too.
Recovery Corner.
Thank you.
And this has been another episode of Pej's Recovery Corner. Again, if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. It's on Pej Interventions. Pej's Recovery Corner is a recovery podcast. Also, share it with everybody, and we are on all podcast platforms. Until we meet again, love you all.